Ever have one of those days you think, nothing can surprise me now? That was me, my last night as CEO. Gold streamers, crystal flutes, a cake shaped like the skyline I built. All of it dressed as celebration, all of it hiding the blade. Tyler, my son-in-law with the salesman's smile, lifted his glass. To the team, he said. Then, softer, sharper. Not to the queen bee who leached off their work. Silence, heavy as stone. And then, my daughter laughed. The chair scraped as I rose. Tyler's grin flickered. Emily's fingers strangled her glass stem. The projector behind me kept humming, parading the buildings I'd carved out of air and stubborn will. Thank you, I said. Takes courage to be that honest. Even when you're wrong. The silence shifted. This time it belonged to me. Here's the truth about endings, they don't come dignified. They come disguised as parties, carrying knives wrapped in ribbon. The champagne was cold. The knives were warm. And I was done going quietly. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The retirement party was my execution disguised as a celebration. I sat at the head table. Gold streamers hung from the ceiling like prison tinsel. Champagne bubbles rose in crystal glasses. People smiled too wide. Their eyes told a different story. 25 years. That's how long I'd run the architecture firm. Tonight, I was supposed to step down gracefully. Hand over the keys. Disappear into irrelevance. The room buzzed with forced cheer. Laughter came in short bursts. Then silence would creep back in. The cake stood 6 layers tall. Someone had designed it to look like a skyscraper. My skyscraper. The one that made the firm's name. Irony tasted bitter on my tongue. Robert stood near the bar. My husband of 32 years, the man who'd stepped in when Emily was 11, and raised her as his own. His smile was tight at the corners. Pride mixed with something else. Worry, maybe. Or grief for what came next. Emily worked the room like she owned it. My daughter, 43 now. She laughed with junior architects. Her eyes kept darting toward me. Checking. Calculating, making sure I behaved. Tyler stood beside her, my son-in-law, 5 years married to Emily. He'd joined the firm 3 years ago. His suit was expensive, his confidence more so. He held his wine glass like a weapon. The slideshow started. Photos from 1999 flashed across the screen. My hair was bigger then. My shoulder pads criminal. People laughed at my fashion disasters. I let them. It was easier than fighting. Karen caught my eye from across the room. My assistant for 18 years. She raised her glass slightly. A private salute. Her face said what her mouth couldn't. This isn't right. The projector hummed. Images cycled through. The duck-shaped pool I'd accidentally approved. That became legendary. A joke that followed me for years. But we'd built it anyway. The client loved it. That's what mattered. Music played softly underneath the chatter. Something instrumental. Forgettable. Background noise for my farewell. The room was too warm. Too many bodies pressed into expensive suits and dresses. I'd arrived at this firm as a secretary in 1979. 22 years old, clutching a second-hand briefcase. The senior partner took a chance on me. Let me draft. Let me pitch. Let me prove myself. By 1999, I owned the company. Bought it when he retired. Built it into something real. Something that mattered. 43 employees now. Projects across 3 states. Revenue that made my younger self dizzy. But tonight felt like theft. Like watching someone pocket your wallet while shaking your hand. The speeches would start soon. Karen would go first. Safe. Sentimental. Then Emily. Probably something about inheriting my work ethic. Robert would talk about sacrifice. About the Italy trip we'd postponed for decades. Then Tyler. I didn't know what he'd planned. But his smirk promised trouble. The lights dimmed slightly. Someone tapped a microphone. The feedback screeched. Conversations died down. Faces turned toward the small stage where I sat. This was supposed to be my moment. My victory lap. Evidence that hard work pays off. That women who start late can still finish strong. Instead, it felt like a funeral. Mine. While I was still breathing. The room settled into expectant silence. Karen stood, smoothed her dress, walked toward the microphone. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Each step echoed. I forced my face into neutral. Arranged my features into gratitude. Into grace. Into whatever mask retired women are supposed to wear. But underneath, my stomach twisted. Something was wrong. I'd felt it for weeks. Months, maybe. Small cuts disguised as concern. Questions about my memory. Suggestions about rest. Hints that I should let go. The knife was coming. I just didn't know which hand held it. Karen reached the microphone. Smiled at me. At the crowd. She opened her mouth to speak. And I realized with perfect, terrible clarity. This wasn't a celebration. It was a transfer of power. A public execution made palatable by cake and champagne. They weren't honoring my past. They were erasing my future. The room spun slightly. Or maybe I did. 25 years of blueprints and budgets. Of missed holidays and midnight phone calls. Of building something from nothing. And now, I was supposed to smile while they took it away. Karen's voice filled the room. Warm. Practiced. She told the duck pool story. People laughed on cue. I laughed too. Hollow. Mechanical. But my mind was elsewhere. Calculating. Planning. Preparing for whatever came next. Because if tonight was my execution, I wasn't going quietly. Not after everything I'd survived. Not after clawing my way up from secretary to CEO. The speeches would continue. Tyler would make his move. Emily would laugh nervously. Robert would squeeze my hand under the table. And I would decide, right here, right now, whether to fade gracefully into retirement. Or fight for the legacy I'd bled to build. The cake waited. The champagne sparkled. The trap was set. But they'd forgotten something important. I'd been underestimated before. By bigger men. In harder times. With more to lose. And every single time, I'd won. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Karen's speech rolled out warm and safe. Exactly what retirement parties demanded. She talked about my early days. How I'd reorganized the filing system in 1985. Made it actually functional. The senior architects noticed. Started asking my opinion on projects. The room settled into comfortable laughter. People sipped champagne. Relaxed into their chairs. This was the script they expected. Karen mentioned the duck pool again. How the client had been furious at first. Then delighted. How I'd turned a mistake into the firm's most photographed project. The story had been told so many times it felt like folklore. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Polite. Measured. Karen returned to her seat. Her hand briefly touched my shoulder. The gesture felt like goodbye. Emily stood next. My daughter moved with rehearsed confidence. She'd worn navy blue. Professional. Forgettable. Her hair pulled back too tight. She talked about growing up with a working mother. How I'd missed some soccer games, but never missed the important ones. How she'd learned determination by watching me negotiate contracts at the dinner table. The words sounded right, but her delivery felt hollow, like reading from a script she hadn't written. Emily said she hoped to inherit my work ethic, but not my taste in office plants. The room laughed. I'd killed 7 ficus trees in my office. Finally gave up and bought plastic ones. She raised her glass, toasted my future, painted retirement as freedom, as reward, as something I'd earned and should embrace. But her eyes never quite met mine. They skated past, landed on Tyler, seeking approval, or permission, or something I couldn't name. The applause came louder this time. Emily sat down, smoothed her dress. Tyler whispered something in her ear. She nodded, smiled. That fake smile I'd seen her practice in mirrors as a teenager. Robert stood. My husband's presence filled the room differently. Solid, real, no performance in his movements. He talked about sacrifice, about the vacations we'd postponed, the anniversary dinners interrupted by client emergencies, the Italy trip we'd been planning for 15 years. His voice cracked once, just slightly, when he mentioned the nights I'd come home after he'd fallen asleep. How he'd wake to find me at the kitchen table. Blueprints spread out, cold coffee beside my hand. Robert said he was proud. That the firm was my masterpiece. That retirement meant finally living for ourselves. Not for deadlines or clients or quarterly reviews. The room went quiet, really quiet. His words carried weight, truth. People shifted in their seats, remembering their own postponed dreams. He raised his glass. The crystal caught the light, created small rainbows on the white tablecloth. He toasted our future, our long-delayed adventure. Then he sat, reached under the table, found my hand, squeezed it. The gesture said everything his speech hadn't. He knew something was wrong. Had known for weeks. The applause was different now. Softer, more genuine. People saw the love, the decades of partnership, the promise of what came next. But Tyler was already standing, moving toward the microphone before the clapping fully stopped. His smile was sharp, practiced, the kind salesmen wear when closing deals. He adjusted the microphone down, made a show of it, drew attention. The room's energy shifted, tightened, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Tyler thanked everyone for coming, said it was an honor to speak. His voice was smooth, too smooth, like oil on water. He talked about the firm's success, about revenue growth, about expansion into new markets. Numbers I'd built, clients I'd landed, projects I'd managed, but he never said my name. Just kept referring to the company, the team, the collective effort. The omission was deliberate, surgical. He was erasing me while pretending to praise my work. Then his tone changed, sharpened. He said something about hard work, about the people who actually built things, the crew who showed up early, stayed late, did the real labor. His pause was theatrical, calculated. He let silence build, let people lean forward. Then he clinked his glass. The sound cut through the room. Sharp, final. Tyler said he wanted to toast the hard-working crew. The people who built this company. Not the queen bee who'd leached off their efforts. The words landed like a physical blow. Punched the air from my lungs. Queen bee. Leached. As if I'd done nothing. Contributed nothing. Merely extracted value from others' work. The room froze. Completely. No movement. No breath. Just shocked silence. Karen's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Suspended in disbelief, a junior architect's face went pale. Then red. Then pale again. Someone coughed. The sound echoed, obscene in the quiet. Emily laughed. A short burst, nervous and sharp, like breaking glass. Half discomfort, half something darker. Permission, maybe, or agreement. The laugh cut deeper than Tyler's words. My own daughter, finding humor in my humiliation. My chest locked, breath trapped somewhere between rage and disbelief. 25 years of my life. Dismissed in one sentence. Reduced to a parasite. The room began to blur. Faces merge. The gold streamers looked cheap now. Tawdry. The skyscraper cake became a monument to my own foolishness. I'd built this place. Saved it from bankruptcy in 2008. Landed the Morrison account that kept 40 families employed. Mentored every architect in this room. And this was my reward. Public execution disguised as honesty. Tyler stood at the microphone. Still smiling. Waiting for applause. For agreement. For someone to validate his cruelty. Robert's hand tightened on mine. Under the table. Out of sight. His grip said what his face couldn't. Stand up. Fight back. Don't let him win. The silence stretched. Became unbearable. Someone had to break it. Fill the void Tyler had created. My chair scraped backward. The sound sharp. Violent. Every eye turned. Watched me stand. My legs shook. Just slightly. But I locked my knees. Straightened my spine. Became the woman who'd pitched to hostile boardrooms. Who'd fought for every contract. Every employee. Every square foot of this building. The room held its breath. Waiting. Wondering what came next. And I smiled. Thin. Cold. The smile I'd used on men who'd underestimated me. Who'd learned, eventually, what that mistake cost. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The room waited. 78 people holding their breath as one organism. My voice came out steady. Calmer than the rage burning in my chest. I thanked Tyler for his honesty. Said it took courage. Even when wrong. The words landed soft. Deceptively gentle. Like a surgeon's first incision. A murmur swept through the crowd. Low. Uncertain. People glanced at each other. Trying to read the room's temperature. Tyler's smile flickered. Just for a second. He hadn't expected politeness. Hadn't prepared for calm. I kept talking. Told the room this company wasn't numbers on a ledger. It was late nights and empty pizza boxes. Chinese takeout at 2 in the morning. The grit of every person here. My eyes found the junior architects. The drafters. The administrative staff. People who'd stayed late. Come in early. Missed their kids' bedtimes for deadlines. They nodded. Small movements. Almost invisible. But I saw them. I said yes. Even Tyler counted. Even his contribution mattered. Despite everything. The air shifted. Tension cracking like ice on a spring pond. Then I paused. Let silence build. Tyler's own weapon turned back on him. I told them if I were truly leeching profits, I'd be sunbathing in Maui. Not standing here. Not bothering with speeches and stale cake. Laughter exploded. Sharp and sudden. Relief made it louder than the joke deserved. The sound broke the spell Tyler had cast. Shattered his careful setup. People remembered who'd signed their paychecks. Who'd fought for their raises. Who'd kept the lights on during the 2008 crash. Karen laughed hardest. Her whole body shaking with it. Others joined. The junior architect who'd gone pale earlier. The accountant near the bar. Even the catering staff smiled. Emily's face froze, caught between her husband and her mother. Between loyalty and truth, her hand went to her throat. An old nervous habit from childhood. Tyler's jaw tightened, the muscle there jumping. His smile stayed fixed but his eyes darkened. Cold, calculating, already planning the next move. Robert squeezed my hand again. Harder this time. Pride and warning mixed together. Don't push too far, but don't back down either. I sat. The chair felt different now. Less like a throne, more like a command post. The applause came in waves. Started with Karen, spread to the drafters, the architects, the people who actually knew what I'd built, what I'd sacrificed. Tyler returned to his seat. Movements too controlled, too careful. Emily whispered to him. He shook his head, sharp, dismissive. The rest of the speeches blurred together. Someone from accounting, a client who'd flown in from Denver. Words about excellence and leadership and legacy. But the room had changed. The energy had shifted. Tyler's grenade had exploded, just not the way he'd intended. People came to my table during the dessert course. Quietly, one or two at a time. They thanked me, told stories I'd forgotten, projects that mattered, moments that stuck. Marcus from drafting reminded me about his daughter's hospital bills. How I'd advanced him 3 months' salary. No questions asked. No paperwork. Sarah from design mentioned the time I'd let her work from home for 6 months. After her mother's stroke, before remote work was normal. Old victories, small kindnesses, the things spreadsheets never captured. Each story was a brick, rebuilding what Tyler had tried to demolish. But Emily stayed at her table, next to Tyler, her plate untouched. She kept glancing over, then looking away, conflict written across her face in shadows. Something had broken between us tonight. Maybe it had been breaking for years. Slowly, so slowly I'd missed it. The caterers began clearing plates, wrapping up leftover cake. The party was ending. People had to work tomorrow. Had babysitters to relieve, lives to return to. I watched them filter out. Handshakes and hugs. Promises to stay in touch. The usual lies people tell at farewells. Karen lingered, helped me gather my things. The plaques and framed photos. The paperweight shaped like a blueprint. 25 years of corporate gifts condensed into one cardboard box. She asked if I was okay. Really okay. Her eyes said she knew the answer. I told her I was fine. Another lie, but a necessary one. Tyler and Emily left without saying goodbye. I watched them walk out. His hand on her lower back. Possessive. Controlling, leading her away from me. When had that happened? When had my daughter become someone else's property? The ballroom emptied slowly. Chairs pushed in. Tables cleared. Gold streamers looking tired now. Drooping from the ceiling like dying flowers. Robert brought the car around. Left me alone for 5 minutes. Those minutes stretched. Became heavy. I sat in the empty room, surrounded by the debris of my retirement. Crumpled napkins and champagne flutes with lipstick stains. The skyscraper cake half demolished. Icing smeared across the serving plate. The quiet was absolute. No more laughter. No more speeches. Just the hum of ventilation and my own breathing. This was supposed to be triumph. The reward for decades of work. Instead it felt like theft. Like watching someone else wear your clothes. Live your life. Tyler's words echoed. Queen bee. Leached. The accusation sat in my stomach. Acid and sharp. But underneath the hurt was something else. Something colder, harder. The same feeling I'd had in 1999 when the bank tried to foreclose. When the Morrison account almost went to our competitor. When people told me I was too old, too female, too late. That feeling had a name. Rage. Pure. Focused. The kind that built empires or burned them down. Robert appeared in the doorway. Patient. Waiting. Ready to take me home. I stood. Left the plaques on the table. Left the corporate gifts. Took only my purse and the coffee-stained mug from my desk. The one that said "World's okayest boss." A joke gift from Karen 5 Christmases ago. The ballroom doors closed behind me. Heavy. Final. The sound of one life ending. But as we walked to the car, my mind was already working. Calculating. Planning. Tyler had made a mistake tonight. A big one. He'd shown his hand. Revealed his intentions. Given me information I could use. And I'd been playing this game since before he was born. The parking lot was empty. Our headlights cut through darkness. Robert drove in silence, knowing I needed space, time to process. But I wasn't processing. I was strategizing. Because retirement wasn't surrender. It was just a change in tactics. And the war had only just begun. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Sleep didn't come that night. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above our bed. Robert's breathing settled into the deep rhythm of sleep. Steady, reliable, like everything about him. But my mind raced, replaying Tyler's words, Emily's nervous laugh, the shocked silence that had swallowed the room. The clock on the nightstand glowed green. 3:17, then 3:42, then 4:15. Dawn crept through the curtains. Gray light turning pale blue. Birds started their morning noise. Oblivious to human drama, I gave up on sleep. Went downstairs. Made coffee in the machine that was too complicated. 6 buttons for what used to take a pot and a filter. The kitchen was cold. October mornings in the Midwest cut through everything. I wrapped my hands around the mug. Let the heat sink in. Yesterday's newspaper sat on the counter. Unread. The retirement party had consumed the entire day. Preparation. Execution. Aftermath. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Just 3 words. Are you okay? The question sat there, blinking, demanding honesty I wasn't ready to give. I typed back that I was fine. Sent it. Deleted the conversation. Couldn't look at her concern right now. Robert found me an hour later. Still at the kitchen table. Coffee gone cold. Staring at nothing. He didn't ask questions. Just made fresh coffee. Toast with butter. Set the plate in front of me like an offering. We ate in silence. 32 years of marriage meant knowing when to speak. When to wait. When to just exist together. Finally, he asked what I wanted to do. Not about Tyler. Not about Emily. Just what came next. The question was bigger than it sounded. Retirement stretched ahead like an empty highway. No exits visible. No destination planned. I told him I didn't know. First honest thing I'd said all morning. My phone rang. Emily's name lit up the screen. My thumb hovered over the answer button. Then let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text. Mom, we need to talk. Call me. The words felt like a summons. Like being called to the principal's office. Reversed roles. Child disciplining parent. I set the phone face down. Couldn't deal with it yet. Didn't know what to say. Robert watched me, his expression unreadable. Then he suggested we go for a drive. Get out of the house. Clear our heads. The car felt different in daylight. less like an escape vehicle, more like a cage on wheels. We drove without direction, past strip malls and fast food joints, subdivisions with identical houses, the sprawl of suburban America. Everything looked tired, faded, like someone had turned down the color saturation on reality. Robert pulled into a park. The one where Emily used to play as a kid. Swings still stood, rusted now, paint peeling. We walked the path around the pond. Dead leaves crunched underfoot. The water was murky, green with algae. Ducks paddled near the shore. An old woman fed them bread, despite the signs saying not to. She smiled at us. We smiled back. Strangers sharing a moment of manufactured peace. Robert finally spoke, said Tyler was wrong, that everyone knew it, that my legacy was solid. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they felt hollow, because Tyler being wrong didn't matter. He'd planted doubt, seeds that would grow, take root. People would remember the accusation, not my defense. That's how character assassination worked. The stain lingered even after the cleaning. I asked Robert if he thought Emily believed it, if my own daughter saw me as a leech. He didn't answer right away. The pause told me everything. Finally, he said Emily was confused, conflicted, that Tyler had influence, but blood was thicker. The cliché felt weak, inadequate. Blood hadn't felt very thick last night. When Emily laughed, when she chose her husband's side. We completed the loop, returned to the car. The old woman was still feeding ducks, defiant in her small rebellion. My phone showed 3 more texts from Emily, each one more insistent. Mom, please, we really need to talk. The pressure built. A headache forming behind my eyes. The kind that meant tension. Stress. The body keeping score. Robert drove us home. The house looked smaller somehow. Less like a sanctuary. More like a waiting room. I told him I needed to call Emily. Get it over with. He nodded. Disappeared into his workshop. Giving me space. My finger hovered over her number. 43 years since I'd given birth to her. Held her. Promised to protect her from everything. Now she felt like a stranger. Someone wearing my daughter's face. Speaking someone else's words. The call connected. 3 rings. 4. Then her voice. Tight. Controlled. She said we needed to discuss last night. That Tyler felt terrible. That things had gotten out of hand. The words were careful, rehearsed, like she'd practiced them, or someone had fed them to her. I asked if she thought Tyler was right. If she believed I'd leached off the company. Silence stretched. Long enough to hurt. Long enough to answer. Finally, Emily said it wasn't that simple. That Tyler had valid concerns. About the transition. About the future. About her role in the company. Her role. There it was. The real issue. The hidden agenda. She kept talking. About succession planning. About modernizing operations. About bringing in fresh perspectives. Corporate speak for pushing out the old guard. I let her finish. Didn't interrupt. Just listened to my daughter explain why I needed to disappear. When she stopped, I asked one question. Was this what she wanted? Or what Tyler wanted? Another pause. Shorter this time, but still damning. Emily said they were a team. That they made decisions together. That I needed to trust her judgment. Trust. The word landed wrong. You don't ask for trust while holding a knife. I told her I'd think about it. Ended the call. Set the phone down like it might explode. The house creaked. Settling sounds. Old wood adjusting to temperature changes. Normal noises that suddenly felt ominous. Robert emerged from the workshop, saw my face, asked if I was okay. That question again, the one with no good answer. I told him Emily wanted me gone. Really gone, not just retired, erased. He sat beside me, his shoulder touching mine. Solid, real, the only thing that felt stable. We stayed like that, two people who'd built a life together, watching it crack apart, unable to stop the fractures from spreading. Outside, the afternoon light turned golden. Beautiful, indifferent. The world kept turning, regardless of personal catastrophe. And somewhere across town, Tyler and Emily were planning, strategizing, deciding my fate without me. But they'd made one critical error. They'd shown me their intentions, given me time to prepare, to fight back. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Monday morning arrived like a punishment. Gray sky, rain threatening but never delivering. Robert left early for his consulting job, kissed my forehead, told me to rest, as if rest were possible. The house echoed. Empty rooms that used to feel cozy now felt abandoned, like a museum of someone else's life. My phone stayed silent. No calls from the office. No questions about ongoing projects. The silence was deliberate, surgical. They'd already cut me out. I made coffee, burned the toast, threw it away, sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. Outside, a neighbor walked her dog. Same route, same time, every single morning. The predictability felt insulting, life continuing while mine collapsed. By 10 o'clock, the restlessness became unbearable. I needed information, needed to know what was happening at the firm. Karen answered on the first ring. Her voice was careful, guarded, like speaking to someone fragile. I asked what was happening at the office. She hesitated. The pause stretched too long. Finally, she told me. Tyler had called a staff meeting Friday afternoon, right after the party, announced new leadership structure. His leadership structure. Emily would take over client relations. Tyler would handle operations. The transition was immediate. No discussion. No vote. My stomach dropped. They'd moved faster than I'd expected. Struck while the iron was hot. While people were still processing the party. Karen's voice dropped lower. She said some people were uncomfortable. Felt the timing was wrong. But no one challenged it. Fear kept mouths shut. I asked about Marcus, Sarah, the people who'd thanked me at the party. She said they were worried. About their jobs. About the new regime. Tyler had already hinted at efficiency improvements. Code for layoffs. The rage came back. Sharp and clean. These were my people. Families I'd protected. Careers I'd nurtured. Karen asked what I was going to do. Her voice held hope, like I might have answers. I told her I didn't know yet. Another lie. I knew exactly what I was going to do. After we hung up, I pulled out the box from my study. The one I'd been avoiding for weeks. Corporate documents, stock certificates, board meeting minutes, partnership agreements. The paper trail of 40 years. I spread them across the dining room table. Created a landscape of legal evidence. The company structure was complex. Deliberately so. I'd set it up that way in 2005. Protection against hostile takeovers. Against exactly this situation. My retirement didn't mean I'd lost everything. Just most things. Important distinction. I still owned 32% of the company. Emily owned 28% through inheritance. Tyler owned nothing. He was just an employee. A well-placed employee. But still just hired help. The rest was distributed among senior partners. People who'd been there for decades. People who remembered. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Then I realized. Jennifer Morrison. The Denver client who'd spoken at the party. She asked if I had time to talk. Said it was important. We arranged to meet Tuesday. A coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. The rest of Monday crawled by. Robert came home to find me still at the dining table. Documents everywhere. Legal pads covered in notes. He asked if I was planning something. His tone suggested he already knew the answer. I told him I was protecting what I'd built. What we'd built. Our retirement fund. Our future. He nodded slowly. Said he'd support whatever I decided. But asked me to be careful. Tyler played dirty. The words hung there. Confirmation of what I'd suspected. Robert had seen it too. The manipulation. The control. The way Tyler operated in shadows. Tuesday morning came cold and sharp. October showing its teeth. I dressed carefully. Professional but not corporate. Strong but not aggressive. The coffee shop was crowded. Students with laptops. Freelancers pretending to work. The smell of espresso and conspiracy. Jennifer arrived exactly on time. She'd always been punctual. One of the things I'd appreciated about working with her. She ordered black coffee. I got tea. We found a corner table. Away from the noise. Jennifer didn't waste time on pleasantries. Said she'd heard things. Rumors about the firm's direction. About Tyler's plans. I asked what kind of rumors. She leaned forward, voice low, confidential. Tyler had been reaching out to clients. Promising better rates. Faster timelines. Suggesting the old leadership had been inefficient. Expensive. My jaw tightened. He was undermining me. Using my own client relationships against me. Jennifer said she wasn't the only one he'd contacted. At least 6 major accounts had received similar calls. She paused. Then asked if I knew about the Portland deal. The expansion Tyler was pushing. I didn't. They'd kept that from me. Deliberately hidden a major business decision. Jennifer explained. Tyler wanted to open a Portland office. Aggressive expansion. Risky timing. He was using my retirement as justification. Fresh start. New direction. But the numbers didn't work. She'd seen the projections. They were optimistic to the point of fiction. If the Portland office failed, it would destabilize everything. Put the whole company at risk. Put 43 families at risk. She leaned back, studied my face, then asked what I was going to do about it. The question echoed Karen's from yesterday. Everyone waiting for me to act. To fight back. I told Jennifer I was still retired. Still officially out of the picture. She smiled. Thin. Knowing. Said retired didn't mean dead. Didn't mean powerless. Then she offered something unexpected. Information. Access to her network. Other clients who were uncomfortable with Tyler's approach. She said loyalty mattered. That I'd earned it over decades. That people remembered who'd been there during hard times. We talked for another hour. Strategy disguised as catching up. Planning masked as concern. When we parted, I had names. Phone numbers. A network of allies I hadn't known existed. The drive home felt different. Less defeated. More purposeful. Like fog lifting to reveal familiar terrain. Robert was in the garage. Working on something mechanical. He looked up when I entered. Grease on his hands. Question in his eyes. I told him I'd met with Jennifer Morrison. That things were worse than I'd thought. But also better. He set down his wrench. Wiped his hands on a rag. Asked what I meant. I explained about the Portland deal. About Tyler's client outreach. About the network of people who wanted the old guard back. Robert listened, face neutral, then asked the crucial question. Was I sure I wanted this fight? The question deserved honesty. Fighting meant stress, conflict, possibly losing my daughter completely. But not fighting meant watching everything collapse. 40 years of work destroyed by one man's ambition. I looked at Robert, at the man who'd supported every crazy decision I'd ever made, who'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I told him I was sure. This wasn't about pride, it was about protection, about the people who'd trusted me, who'd built their lives around the company. He nodded, just once, then said he'd get his own hands dirty if needed. Whatever it took. Outside, the rain finally started. Soft at first, then harder, washing the world clean, making space for what came next. I went to my study. Pulled out the old Rolodex. Yes, I still kept one. Physical backup for when technology failed. Started making calls. Careful calls. Quiet calls. Building coalition in whispers. The way wars were really won. By evening, I'd spoken with 7 people. Board members, senior partners, longtime clients. Each conversation planted seeds, raised questions, created doubt about Tyler's vision. The counterattack had begun, subtle, strategic, the way I'd always operated. Tyler had made his move in public, loud and arrogant, counting on shock and speed. But I'd spent 40 years learning patience, learning when to strike, when to wait. And now, finally, it was time to remind everyone. The queen bee built the hive, protected it, and would burn it down before letting it fall to invaders. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Karen appeared at my door at 7:30, still wearing yesterday's makeup, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. She came inside without asking, went straight to the kitchen, poured coffee like she owned the place. Then she told me everything. Tyler had fired Marcus that morning. No warning, no severance beyond the legal minimum. 22 years of service erased in 15 minutes. The reason given was restructuring, efficiency improvements, corporate speak for cruelty. But everyone knew the real reason. Marcus had defended me at the party. Had reminded people about the salary advance. About loyalty that went both ways. Tyler was sending a message. Clear. Brutal. Choose sides. Choose correctly. Karen's hands shook as she held her mug. She asked if I'd heard from the board. If anyone had pushed back. I told her 3 board members had called me yesterday. Concerned but cautious. Afraid of Tyler. Afraid of Emily. Afraid of their own jobs. She set down her coffee. Said people were scared. That Tyler had created an atmosphere of paranoia. Everyone watching everyone else. Waiting to see who'd fall next. The strategy was classic. Divide and conquer. Make people too afraid to unite. Too worried about survival to fight back. But fear was a double-edged weapon. Push too hard and people stopped caring. Started taking risks. Became dangerous. Karen asked what my plan was. Her voice held desperation, like I was the only life raft in sight. I told her to go home. Get sleep. Act normal. Pretend nothing had changed. She stared at me, confused, hurt, like I'd abandoned her too. I explained, quietly, carefully, that Tyler was watching, that anyone close to me would be targeted, that the best protection was distance. Understanding dawned slowly. She nodded, stood, hugged me quickly, then left without another word. The house felt emptier after she left. Heavy with unspoken strategy, with plans that required patience. Robert found me an hour later, still in the kitchen, staring at cold coffee. He said Emily had called him, asked him to talk sense into me, to convince me to accept retirement gracefully. The word gracefully landed wrong, like asking a drowning person to sink quietly. I asked what he'd told her. His smile was thin, dangerous. Said he'd told her I'd always been stubborn, that she should know that by now. Emily had pushed, said I was making things difficult, making the transition harder than necessary. That Tyler was just trying to modernize, move forward. Robert's jaw tightened as he recounted it. His daughter, our daughter, parroting her husband's words, unable or unwilling to see the manipulation. He'd asked her one question: if she remembered who'd paid for her education, her wedding, her first car, who'd sacrificed for her success. Emily had gone quiet, then said that was different. That was personal. This was business. The separation was complete. She'd drawn the line, chosen Tyler's side, made it official. Robert reached across the table, took my hand. His grip was strong, steady, the way it had been for 32 years. We sat like that, two people watching their family fracture, powerless to stop it, or maybe just choosing not to. Thursday morning I drove to the office. First time since the party. The building looked the same. Red brick, glass entrance, the fountain that never worked quite right. But something felt different, hostile, like the building itself had turned against me. Security didn't stop me. I still had my key card. Still technically had access. The oversight would be corrected soon. But for now, the door opened. The lobby was empty, too early for most staff. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. Needed the time, the preparation. My old office was on the 3rd floor. Corner view, windows facing east and south. I'd picked that location in 1999. Earned it. The door was locked. New lock. Digital keypad instead of traditional key. My code didn't work. Through the frosted glass, I could see shadows. Someone was inside, moving around, rearranging. I knocked. Sharp. Authoritative. The movement stopped. Then footsteps. The door opened. Tyler stood there, coffee in hand, surprise flickering across his face. Then quickly masked. He said he hadn't expected me. That I should have called ahead. The words polite but the tone dismissive. I asked what he was doing in my office. He corrected me. His office now. Part of the transition. The presumption was breathtaking. I hadn't officially vacated. Hadn't moved my personal items. The office was still legally mine until month's end. Tyler stepped aside, gestured for me to enter. Like granting permission in my own space. The office was different already. My photos packed in boxes. My diplomas removed from walls. His degrees hung in their place. MBA from a mediocre school. Undergrad from somewhere I'd never heard of. My desk was bare. The coffee-stained mug gone. The paperweight. The photos of Emily as a child. All erased. I asked where my things were. Tyler pointed to boxes in the corner. Sealed with packing tape. Ready for disposal. He said he'd been meaning to call me. To arrange pickup. But things had been busy. The transition required focus. His tone suggested inconvenience. Like my belongings were clutter. Obstacles to his vision. I walked to the window. The view was the same. City skyline. Morning light catching glass towers. The view I'd earned. defended, treasured. Tyler watched me, calculating, trying to read my mood, my intentions. I asked about Marcus, about the firing, my voice neutral, conversational, like discussing weather. Tyler's expression hardened slightly, said Marcus was dead weight, that the company needed efficiency, that hard decisions were necessary. The words were practiced, rehearsed. He'd said them before, would say them again, each firing another notch in his belt. I turned from the window, met his eyes, asked if he thought I was dead weight too. The question hung there, sharp, dangerous, demanding honesty he wasn't prepared to give. Tyler smiled, that practiced smile, said of course not, that I'd built something remarkable, that my contribution was appreciated. But his eyes told a different story. Yes, he thought I was dead weight, an obstacle, something to be removed. I told him I'd be back for my things soon, that he should keep them safe. The implied threat was subtle, but he caught it. His smile faltered, just for a second. I left without another word, took the stairs down, each step deliberate, controlled, refusing to run, refusing to show weakness. The parking lot felt like freedom. Air cleaner, lighter. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing, processing. Tyler had overplayed his hand, moved too fast, shown too much arrogance, made himself vulnerable. My phone buzzed. Text from Karen. Marcus wants to talk. Can I give him your number? I replied yes, then added, tell him to bring documentation. Everything he has. The pieces were assembling. Marcus's wrongful termination, Tyler's client manipulation, the risky Portland expansion, board members' quiet concerns. Individually, they were problems. Together, they were ammunition. Evidence of instability, of leadership that threatened the company's foundation. I drove to a coffee shop, different from the one where I'd met Jennifer. Anonymity mattered now. Ordered tea, found a corner booth, pulled out a yellow legal pad, started writing names, dates, incidents, building a timeline of Tyler's mistakes. The pattern emerged clearly. Aggressive, reckless, focused on short-term gains over long-term stability. Classic signs of someone in over their head. My phone rang. Marcus. His voice was tight, angry, scared. He asked if we could meet. I suggested Friday morning. Same coffee shop. Told him to bring employment records, performance reviews, any communication with Tyler. He agreed immediately, then thanked me. The gratitude in his voice was painful. He shouldn't have to thank me. I should have protected him better. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, watching people come and go. Students, professionals, retirees with newspapers and crossword puzzles. Normal lives, uncomplicated lives. Lives I'd never quite managed to build. But maybe that was okay. Maybe some people were meant for fight, for struggle, for refusing to surrender. The tea went cold. The morning stretched into afternoon. And slowly, carefully, my strategy took shape. Tyler thought he'd won. Thought retirement meant defeat. Thought age meant weakness. He was about to learn otherwise. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Friday morning. Marcus arrived early, 20 minutes before our scheduled time. His face looked hollow, aged 10 years in 3 days. He carried a manila folder, thick with papers, evidence of a career reduced to documentation. We sat in the same corner booth. I ordered him coffee. He didn't touch it, just stared at the cup like it might explode. Finally, he started talking about the meeting with Tyler. How it had lasted 7 minutes. How Tyler had smiled the entire time. Called it a business decision. Nothing personal. But it was personal. Everything about it was personal. Tyler was eliminating anyone loyal to me. Systematically. Methodically. Like pruning dead branches. Marcus opened the folder. Showed me his performance reviews. 10 years of exceeds expectations. Commendations for quality work. Client praise. Awards for safety and efficiency. Nothing justified termination. Nothing even suggested problems. The firing was pure retaliation. Illegal. Provable. I asked if he'd consulted a lawyer. Marcus shook his head. Said lawyers cost money. Money he didn't have. Not with 3 kids and a mortgage. The injustice sat heavy between us. A good man punished for loyalty. For doing the right thing. I told him I'd pay for a lawyer. The best employment attorney in the state. That we'd document everything. Build an airtight case. His eyes welled up. He tried to speak. Couldn't. Just nodded. Pushed the folder toward me. I spent an hour going through the documents. Performance reviews. Pay stubs. Emails. Text messages. A paper trail of competence interrupted by sudden termination. One email caught my attention. From Tyler to Emily. Dated 4 days before the retirement party. Subject line, transition planning. Marcus explained. He'd accidentally received it. CC'd by mistake. Tyler had tried to recall it. But Marcus had already read it. The email detailed their strategy. Remove legacy employees. Bring in younger staff. People without history. Without loyalty to the old regime. My name appeared 6 times. Always in context of obstacles. Problems to solve. Resistance to overcome. Emily had replied. Agreed with the strategy. Added suggestions. Her words were cold. Clinical. Like discussing inventory reduction. The betrayal cut deeper than Tyler's speech. This was premeditated. Calculated. My own daughter planning my erasure. Marcus asked what I wanted to do. His voice held something new. Not just desperation. Anger. The dangerous kind that came from broken trust. I told him we'd need more. More evidence. More witnesses. More documentation of Tyler's recklessness. He leaned forward. Said there was something else. Something bigger. Tyler had been meeting with a private equity firm. Talks about selling the company. The words hit like ice water. Selling. My company. Built from nothing. Nurtured through recessions. Protected through hard times. Marcus pulled out more papers. Meeting notes he'd found in the office printer. Tyler's handwriting. Numbers. Projections. Timeline for acquisition. The sale was projected for March. 5 months away. Contingent on successful Portland expansion. On demonstrating growth potential. Everything made sense now. The aggressive timeline. The risky expansion. The elimination of experienced staff. Tyler was packaging the company for sale. Making it attractive to buyers who valued appearance over substance. And Emily was helping him. Clearing obstacles. Smoothing the path. Trading legacy for profit. I asked Marcus what he wanted. Really wanted. Beyond legal recourse. Beyond settlement money. He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, traffic passed. People with normal problems. Simple lives. Finally, he said he wanted justice. Wanted Tyler exposed. Wanted the company saved. Even if he never got his job back. The sentiment was pure. Uncomplicated by revenge. Just a good man wanting wrong things made right. I told him to keep gathering evidence. Document everything. Save every email. Record every conversation if legal. Build a case so solid it couldn't be ignored. Marcus left with purpose, direction, something to fight for beyond his own situation. I sat alone with the documents. Reading, rereading, seeing patterns I'd missed, connections I hadn't made. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered carefully. A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. She identified herself as Patricia Chen, senior partner at Morrison & Associates, Jennifer's firm. She said Jennifer had mentioned our conversation. That Patricia represented several clients concerned about the firm's direction. That perhaps we should talk. We arranged to meet Monday. Her office. Downtown. The fact that she'd reached out meant word was spreading. Concern was growing. The weekend passed in strategic planning. Robert helped, made phone calls, used his network, connected dots I couldn't reach alone. Saturday, we learned Tyler had already spent half the Portland office budget. Signed a lease, hired contractors, committed funds without board approval. Sunday, another board member called. Gerald Fishman, founder's grandson, major shareholder. He'd been silent since the retirement party. Watching, waiting. Gerald asked if the rumors were true. About Tyler's management style. About the Portland expansion. About the private equity talks. I confirmed what I knew. Provided documentation. Sent copies of Marcus's evidence. Let facts speak for themselves. Gerald was quiet for a long time. Then said a special board meeting might be necessary. That concerns needed addressing. That fiduciary duty mattered. The tide was turning. Slowly, but definitely. People were waking up. Seeing past Tyler's charm. His promises. His manufactured urgency. Monday morning Patricia Chen's office was impressive. Corner suite. 32nd floor. View that made mine look modest. She was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 50. Sharp suit. Sharper eyes. No time wasted on pleasantries. Patricia laid out the situation clinically. 5 major clients were concerned. 3 were actively considering leaving. 2 had already drafted termination notices. The potential revenue loss was catastrophic. Nearly 40% of annual income. Enough to trigger default on lines of credit. Enough to force bankruptcy. She asked what I knew about Tyler's plans. I told her everything. The sale talks. The Portland expansion. The systematic elimination of experienced staff. Patricia made notes. Quick. Efficient. Then asked the crucial question. What did I want to happen? The answer should have been simple. Remove Tyler. Restore stability. Save the company. But it wasn't that easy. Emily was complicit. Removing Tyler meant exposing her. Potentially destroying her career. Our relationship. Everything. Patricia watched me struggle. Then said something unexpected. That sometimes love meant letting people face consequences. That protecting Emily from her choices wasn't kindness. It was enabling. The words hit hard. True but brutal. I'd spent 43 years protecting my daughter. From scraped knees. From bad boyfriends. From her own mistakes. But this was different. This was her choice. Conscious. Deliberate. Made with full knowledge of consequences. I told Patricia to proceed. Prepare documentation. File complaints with the board. Make the case for Tyler's removal. She nodded. Said it would take time. Maybe weeks. But the foundation was solid. The evidence compelling. As I left her office, my phone buzzed. Text from Emily. Mom, we need to talk. In person. Today. The summons felt ominous. Like being called to execution. but I couldn't avoid it forever. I texted back, agreed to meet, suggested a restaurant. Public, neutral, safe from emotional explosions. The lunch was scheduled for 2 o'clock. 3 hours away. 3 hours to prepare, to armor myself, to remember why I was doing this. Not for revenge, not for pride, for the 43 families depending on the company. For the legacy that mattered more than comfort. For the principle that wrong things shouldn't win just because they're easier. The restaurant was crowded, lunch rush in full swing. Emily was already there, sitting in a booth, back straight, face set. She looked like me at that age. Determined, certain, convinced of her own righteousness. I slid into the seat across from her. Waited. Let her speak first. Emily said we needed to resolve this. That my actions were hurting everyone. Making transition impossible. Damaging the company we both loved. The accusation was absurd. I wasn't damaging anything. Tyler was. But she couldn't see it. Or wouldn't. I asked if she knew about the sale talks. The private equity meetings. The plan to gut and flip the company. Her face flickered. Surprise. Then defensive. She said Tyler was exploring options. Maximizing value. Being strategic. The corporate speak sounded hollow. Rehearsed. Tyler's words in her mouth. I asked if she remembered why I'd started the company. The values. The commitment to employees. The long-term vision. Emily's jaw tightened. Said times change. That nostalgia wasn't strategy. That sentiment didn't pay bills. And there it was. The fundamental divide. She saw the company as asset. I saw it as responsibility. I told her I couldn't support the sale. Couldn't watch 40 years destroyed for quarterly profits. Couldn't betray people who'd trusted me. Emily leaned forward, voice low, intense. She said I needed to let go. Accept reality. Stop fighting losing battles. But this wasn't a losing battle. It was the only battle that mattered. I stood. Left money for my untouched meal. Told Emily I loved her. Always would. But couldn't support her choices. Her face crumpled. Just for a second. Then hardened. She said I was choosing strangers over family. That I'd regret it. Maybe I would. But some regrets were worth carrying. The fight was no longer coming. It was here. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. 2 weeks after the retirement party that had started everything. Gerald Fishman had called it. Exercised his rights as founding family member. The agenda was simple. Review current leadership decisions. Discuss company direction. Vote if necessary. Tyler tried to block it. Claimed insufficient notice. Procedural violations. Anything to delay the inevitable. But the bylaws were clear. I'd written them myself in 2005. Designed them for exactly this situation. Protection against hostile takeover from within. Wednesday night I couldn't sleep. Again. The ceiling fan spun. Robert snored softly. The house creaked its familiar sounds. Tomorrow would determine everything. 45 years in this firm, 25 as its leader. 43 families' livelihoods. The legacy I'd built. At 5 a.m. I gave up on sleep. Made coffee. Reviewed my notes one final time. The documentation was overwhelming. Marcus's wrongful termination. Tyler's unauthorized spending. The private equity negotiations. Client complaints. Budget overruns. All catalogued. All provable. Patricia Chen had assembled it into a presentation. 37 slides. Each one a nail in Tyler's coffin. Robert found me at 6. Still in my bathrobe. Papers spread across the kitchen table. He asked if I was ready. I told him I didn't know. Didn't know if I could face Emily across that boardroom table. He reminded me why I was doing this. Not for revenge, for protection, for all the people counting on me. The words helped, steadied my resolve, gave me something to hold on to. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived at 9:30. Early but not desperately so. The boardroom was on the 4th floor. Corner location. Windows overlooking the city. I'd held hundreds of meetings here. This one felt different. Final. Gerald was already there, setting up the projector. He nodded when I entered. Respect. Solidarity. Silent acknowledgement that today mattered. Other board members filtered in. Susan Martinez. Thomas Chen. Patricia's brother. Donna Williams. People I'd worked with for decades. Their faces were serious. Concerned. They knew what was coming. Had read the documentation. Understood the stakes. Tyler arrived at 9:55. Emily beside him. Both dressed for battle. Professional armor. Confident expressions. They took seats at the far end. Created physical distance. Emily's eyes met mine once. Briefly, then looked away. The gesture hurt more than her words ever could. Karen slipped in last, taking notes, her official role as corporate secretary. But her presence felt like support. Like having one ally in enemy territory. Gerald called the meeting to order. Reviewed the agenda. Asked if anyone had procedural objections. Tyler immediately objected. Said the meeting was premature. That concerns should go through proper channels. That this felt like ambush. Gerald listened patiently, then reminded Tyler that board oversight was proper channels. That fiduciary duty required investigation. That transparency mattered. The rebuke was gentle but firm. Tyler's face tightened. He'd expected support. Found accountability instead. Patricia began the presentation. Her voice was calm. Professional. Just facts. No emotion. No editorializing. Slide 1 showed Marcus's termination. Performance reviews beside firing notice. The disconnect obvious. Damning. Slide 5 detailed Portland expenses. Committed funds. Signed contracts. All without board approval. All exceeding authorized budgets. Slide 12 documented client concerns. Emails. Letters. Meeting notes. Pattern of dissatisfaction with new leadership approach. Each slide built the case. Methodical. Irrefutable. The kind of evidence that ended careers. Tyler interrupted repeatedly. Claimed context was missing. That decisions made sense. That growth required risk. But his explanations sounded hollow. Desperate. Like someone drowning in their own lies. Emily stayed silent. Face pale. Hands clasped on the table. She'd known some of this. But not all. Not the full scope of Tyler's recklessness. Slide 23 showed the private equity communications. Meeting schedules. Valuation discussions. Sale timeline. All conducted secretly. All designed to profit Tyler and Emily while gutting the company. The room went completely quiet. Even Tyler stopped objecting. Just sat there. Exposed. Caught. Gerald asked Tyler directly if he'd been negotiating sale without board knowledge. Tyler hesitated. Too long. The pause was admission enough. Finally, he said he'd been exploring options. Maximizing shareholder value. Doing his job. Gerald's response was ice cold. Said Tyler's job was managing operations. Not selling assets. Not making unilateral decisions affecting everyone's livelihood. The rebuke echoed. Thomas Chen nodded agreement. Susan Martinez made notes. Donna Williams looked disgusted. Patricia continued. Slide 30 showed projected outcomes. If Portland failed, if clients left, if experienced staff departed, the numbers were catastrophic. Bankruptcy within 18 months. Tyler called it speculation. Fear-mongering. Said the projections were worst-case scenarios. But Gerald pointed out they were based on Tyler's own budget documents. His own timelines. His own promises to private equity firms. The contradiction was fatal. Tyler had no response. Just sat there, deflating slowly. Patricia finished, closed her laptop, asked if there were questions. Susan Martinez asked about succession planning, about who would lead if changes were made. The question hung there, everyone looking at me, waiting. I hadn't prepared a speech. Didn't have corporate talking points. Just truth. I told them I didn't want the job back. That I'd earned retirement, deserved it, but couldn't watch the company destroyed. Said we needed interim leadership. Someone stable, experienced, someone who understood the foundation, the values, the commitment to people. Gerald suggested a management committee. Shared leadership, multiple perspectives, no single point of failure. The proposal made sense. Collaborative, protective, different from what we'd had before. Thomas Chen moved to remove Tyler as operations director. Effective immediately. Pending full investigation. Susan Martinez seconded. The vote was unanimous. 6-0. Emily abstained. Didn't vote. Didn't defend her husband. Just sat there, silent, broken. Tyler stood abruptly, chair scraping. Said this was illegal. That he'd lawyer up. That everyone would regret it. Gerald told him to collect his personal items. Security would escort him. Standard procedure for terminated executives. The words terminated seemed to penetrate Tyler's armor. His face went red, then white. He looked at Emily, waiting for her to speak. To defend him. She said nothing, just stared at the table. Choosing silence over loyalty. Finally seeing what I'd seen all along. Tyler left, escorted by building security. The door closed. Silence filled the space he'd occupied. Gerald addressed Emily directly. Asked if she'd known about the sale negotiations. About the unauthorized spending. About the systematic elimination of loyal staff. Emily's voice was barely audible. Said she'd known some. Not everything. That Tyler had handled operations. That she'd trusted him. The excuse was weak. Inadequate. She was a 43-year-old executive. Not a naive child. She'd made choices. Had to own them. Gerald suggested Emily take a leave of absence. Paid. Not punitive. Just time to reflect. Decide if she wanted to continue. The offer was generous. More than she deserved. Emily nodded. Tears finally coming. Too late to matter. The meeting ended at 1:15. 3 hours that changed everything. Restored balance. Saved the company. People filed out slowly. Quiet. Processing. Susan squeezed my shoulder. Thomas shook my hand. Gerald pulled me aside. He thanked me. Said my documentation had been crucial. That without evidence, nothing would have changed. But I felt no triumph. No satisfaction. Just exhaustion. And grief for what I'd lost. Emily was last to leave. She paused at the door. Looked back. Opened her mouth to speak. I waited, hoping for apology. For understanding. For recognition of damage done. Instead, she said she'd done what she thought was right. That she'd believed in Tyler's vision. That sometimes believing wasn't enough. Then she left, taking pieces of my heart with her, leaving holes that might never fill. Karen helped me pack up the presentation materials, the documentation, evidence of war nobody had wanted. She asked what happened next. I told her honestly. I didn't know. The company needed rebuilding. Trust needed restoration. Marcus needed his job back. Clients needed reassurance. Employees needed stability. But first, I needed rest. Real rest. The kind that came from battles won. Not just fought. Robert picked me up at 2. Saw my face. Knew everything without asking. Drove home in comfortable silence. That evening we sat on the back porch. October sunset painting the sky orange and gold. The air was crisp, clean, full of possibility. Robert asked if I felt victorious. I told him no. Victory required happiness. This was just survival. But survival mattered. Survival meant tomorrow. Meant second chances. Meant possibility of repair. He took my hand. Same way he'd done at the retirement party. Steady. Present. Anchoring me. The Italy trip was still possible. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, when things stabilized, when wounds started healing. My phone stayed silent. Emily didn't call, didn't text. The silence was its own message, its own wound. But Karen texted, said Marcus was coming back Monday. That people were relieved. That hope was spreading through the office. The words helped, reminded me why I'd fought. What mattered beyond personal loss. Retirement no longer felt like ending. It felt like transition, like necessary evolution, like learning to hold power differently. The company would survive, not because of me, because of everyone. Collective strength, shared commitment, people who chose right over easy. And I would survive too. Scarred but standing, diminished but not defeated, carrying loss but also wisdom. Fear only won if you surrendered. I'd chosen to fight, to stand, to protect what mattered. The choice cost everything. My daughter, my peace, my simple retirement dreams. But some costs were worth paying. Some battles worth fighting. Some principles worth dying on. The sunset faded. Stars emerged. The night sky endless. Full of light if you looked carefully. Robert squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. And together, we faced whatever came next. Because the story wasn't over. It was just beginning differently. And different didn't mean defeated. It just meant learning to win in new ways.